Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back to another month in review, this time for October 2017. Now, ordinarily I'd go through a few stories, but today there's one that stands out because as much as Brexit has become a continued disaster and laughingstock, in spite of some of the horrific things that have been happening around the world, I feel like there's one thing in particular that is incredibly important for not just people within the UK where this is actually happening, but also for people outside of it, considering it sets a precedent for especially the aggressively and ridiculously right-wing parties that have been taking control of various countries and their kind of general flow and rhetoric. And what I want to talk about here is Theresa May's coming out and as well as the Snoopers Charter that she's already had passed, the Investigatory Powers Bill or Powers Act, that already makes us less safe online because she doesn't understand how the internet works. Many of the other people that she's surrounded with don't have any understanding of how the internet works or what goes on here. And let's face it, the majority of people in these positions tend to be older and they tend to be fearful. That's where we have an awful lot of problems, which include Brexit and the silly bullshit that's happened around that, because it is entirely built upon fear of those outside of our ordinary sphere. It's perceived lack of control rather than an actual lack of control. But anyway, on to the point. Despite the fact that she's already got the Snoopers Charter that forces various companies to create back doors into their systems, many of which, by the way, already existed to one extent or another and were to one extent or another already available to the authorities in regards to the police and whoever else. You know, for instance, I know full well that Facebook has a very straightforward kind of access point backdoor built in for people in police and law enforcement to go in and track and observe and whatever else. You know, there's already systems in place that were well before the Snoopers Charter was even put out there, but then they lowered the security for the average person, for the consumer, by forcing companies such as WhatsApp that encrypt their information and keep it as safe as possible, to create back doors to allow further observation and further monitoring by law enforcement in the most horrific Orwellian way possible, almost. Insecurity through greater security, I think, would be the way to sum that up. But now, on top of that, Theresa May has come out with this new thing this month, which is that she is now looking to introduce additional huge regulations in regards to what can be posted and in regards to various other areas, such as not just personal data, but in regards to other things such as pornography, such as what they will deem hate speech, such as other issues here and there, and in regards to the way that commerce works. And she, here we go. The plans will allow Britain to become the global leader in regulation of use of personal data and the internet, the manifesto claims. Now, there's a problem with this because what she's suggesting here in regards to introducing huge restrictions of what people can post, share, publish, work with, access. I'm sorry, Theresa, but you've already been pipped to the post by places like North Korea and China. And they are places that we at times have condemned for their kind of poor approach to the way that they treat their people and the lack of freedom that is sometimes and quite often, especially in places like North Korea and China, where there is the distinct lack of freedom. And they use the word safe space in the manifesto as well. So it's the manifesto makes reference to those increased powers, saying that it will ensure that there is no safe space for terrorists to be able to communicate online. So there's one problem with that. You've already thrown the government's weight around in regards to interjecting on these companies. That at that point it was a direct relationship between consumer and the company that was providing the service. And so if there was a terms of service breach, then it might take them a while. It might take them a little time, especially in the cases of some of the more inefficient ones like YouTube. It would take them a couple of days, but they would find the offending content and remove it. In some cases, they have become far too stringent as well, because they are suppressing just straightforward, non-controversial kind of content, purely because they've left it up to an AI and whatever else. But that's stuff that we've covered before. But here's the thing. So before now, earlier this year, last year, we've seen these backdoors, these ways into various software, onto various sites, programs that people are using to communicate, stuff like that. We have seen those tools falling into the hands of criminals and hackers, who have then used them to steal huge amounts of other people's private information, to take vast companies that affect the lives of millions and millions of people and impact those horribly. For instance, in America, we've seen the whole Equifax thing recently in regards to credit scores and stuff like that. We saw the whole Ashley Madison thing. We've seen the Yahoo breaches. We've seen all of these things like time and time again, just because there are weaknesses and insecurities in the program. Not too long ago, we had our own NHS computer systems brought down because they weren't kept up to date, because they were poorly maintained, because someone had opened the wrong email and it was allowed to run riot. And so as a result, it's not you're suggesting that tech savvy criminals aren't going to find their own safe space online, when, let's face it, you opening up more weaknesses in programs, creating more backdoors, and so on and so forth, are going to in some way make the defenses of those sites stronger against those people. You're joking, right? You're living in a dream world. I'm sorry, this is bizarre. But as said, they seem to be pushing for this based on the terrorist thing, which, if you go and take a look at the law lecturer who commented on this to The Guardian, who is Paul Bernal, law lecturer at the University of East Anglia, his comments, I think, sum it up pretty well. The knee-jerk blame the internet that comes after every act of terrorism is so blatant as to be embarrassing. And I've got to agree, because everybody's using the internet. Most of the people are using it for just normal, straightforward communication, normal, straightforward trade, commerce, dissemination of ideas. And we've already seen recently, just this last week, we've had, as much as I may have my issues with the structure and conduct of universities to one extent or another, which I've gone over before, we've got MPs literally coming out and going, give us all the information on the people who are lecturing about Brexit and how we're going to and kind of all the materials on it, all of which can be found online. But this individual wanted to tackle it directly and make a big thing of it. I can't remember his name, Chris something double-barreled. And so it's a case of they are looking to censor. The government are looking to censor, suppress, and target. And this is no different. They are using the fear around terrorism to run this forward, which, considering that the other things that they are talking about are this. So they, in the manifesto, they say, we will put a responsibility on industry to not direct users, even unintentionally, to hate speech, pornography, or other sources of harm. Firstly, that's categorising pornography, a legitimate business that has much better sexual health standards than you would expect, that has been demonstrated not to be directly harmful unless addicted to it, in which case that's an issue with addiction and device use, not an issue with the content itself. We already had them trying to censor and kind of purify our country already when they were trying to ban certain forms of niche porn like a year or two ago. Might have been last year or it might have been 2015, I can't remember, but not so long ago, where you had them saying things like consensual face sitting was a thing that was terrible and needed to be removed from content, which was ridiculous. But not only are they putting pornography on the same level as hate speech. Hate speech, by the way, also a very large, broad, undefined term that, quite frankly, some of the things that I've said where I've directed comments towards the government and said that they were ridiculous, where I've spelt out things in a very straightforward and even fashion addressing facts instead of fictions, that to some people would be considered hate speech, and yet those things are all being lumped together potentially, and then other sources of harm. Please define, because so far that seems to, from the other two things that you've specified, hate speech in terms of actual incitement to violence and discrimination and things like that are very direct and obvious without other cause are, yes, they are already illegal. Great, you are reinforcing that. But then again, with evidence, they're already illegal, so a person could bring evidence to the police against someone who was using communication online to do this for harassment, for the sake of inciting violence and so on, and already report that person. So now you're not just doing your job, you are imposing on people. You are making a point of saying that there is a responsibility on the industry to not direct users. And now here's the issue that I have with that. The industry that they are discussing here are search engines and sites and things like that, like Google and other such things, which, quite frankly, they're tools. They aren't there to filter what people are looking for. They are there to help people find what they are looking for. And again, the suppression of these things can potentially also hinder the creation of better ways to tackle these things. You need to look at hate speech to find the patterns there so that you can actually suggest how we can fix it, to pinpoint why these people are believing these things, so that education can then follow. It all needs to be assessed and analysed, but if you are shutting them down and making it harder to find, then you are also making it harder to find the solution, as the study cannot take place in the first place. As said, pornography, not a thing that is harmful. Something that is already a controlled product, yes. Something that already has stipulations on companies that supply those things, yes. Things like age verifications and stuff like that, are there ways around it? Of course there are. But then again, that is going to be a problem whether you put these things in place or not, because anyone can make up anything about themselves on the internet, unless you are going to start using things like direct identification in a digital sense to track people, which again, incredibly Orwellian, because that means that you are going to be tracing people more so than you already do. My phone is turned on. You can find me wherever I am. I am logged into my computer. I'm sure that that is just as easy to track, if not potentially easier, as it is stationary. And as a result, me being logged onto it, we've already seen in recent years as well that there are other things that you guys have access to in regards to tools that allow you to access things like my camera remotely without it even seemingly being turned on, and so on and so forth. There are already a huge number of holes and weaknesses, most of which are already exploited by governments around the world, not necessarily by ours specifically. But then lumping in things that are just, we don't like this, and so therefore we're going to consider them harmful, is absurd and ridiculous, not to mention the fact that it is just plainly damaging. But then also, things that stand out to me additionally are things that say that it would force technology companies to delete anything that a person posted when they were under the age of 18. So all of those people who are those kids who are using Facebook, using any other bit of information, if their profile is on there and they're counted as being under 18 because they have told the truth on their profile, and all they're doing is sharing cat pictures and talking to their friends, then you are further isolating people. And not just isolating people, you are removing the constant living archive of their lives. It is one of the most useful tools for people to analyse. And yet you are looking to remove it entirely and isolate people by doing so, which is insane. And then kind of further looking down, where we're seeing that the supposed, well, here's another quote in regards to creating the safest place to be online. In harnessing the digital revolution, we must take steps to protect the vulnerable and give people confidence to use the internet without fear of abuse, criminality, or exposure to horrific content. Again, apparently, pornography is horrific content when it's one step up from what you'd see in Game of Thrones at the weekend. Does this mean that Game of Thrones is the next thing to be censored? Does this mean that HBO is just going to stop existing in the UK? It's absurd. And so, but when it comes to fear of abuse, criminality, or exposure to things, well, yeah, but what about, you're saying that you're limiting what people can and can't do, and this isn't just, you're saying that this is to protect the vulnerable and give people confidence. Well, I would be confident if you would allow me to manage my own affairs online. It's part of a system that I can turn on and off at will, in which case I don't need you sticking your nose in it, thank you very much, and neither does anyone else. Me doing business online shouldn't be monitored by them. It should be monitored by what I already have to produce to demonstrate that I am doing business online, to the fact that I am communicating privately with my girlfriend or with clientele or with anybody else. I should be completely safe in doing so, as it's just another form of communication that I am utilising. To hell with them suggesting that they're going to somehow suddenly protect me, when they are weakening the defences of systems that have otherwise worked fairly well in regards to keeping people safe. But it's the fact that they don't like how much some of these systems are keeping people safe, because it's not just keeping them safe from the bad guys, it's keeping them safe from the government. Oh yeah, the bad guys. The people that have already got a long track record of ruining things, including things like the National Health Service, which, by the way, just on a tangent, moving away from this for a second, they've also started trying to provide rent to people so that those people will hire out their rooms, their spare rooms and things, to people recovering from operations in the NHS to free up beds. When those people need aftercare, those people need to be looked after, they need to be monitored. You don't have enough nurses and things as it is. You're losing them at the moment, or not hiring them at the moment, due to trusts not actually being able to use the money that they have already effectively, and still being underfunded in various ways. And so this is absurd. This is a madness, truly. That in and of itself. But so they're going to protect the weakened when they require medical assistance by giving them to the public for money, and they're looking to weaken our ability to look after ourselves, to remain private citizens, to control our own affairs, to reinforce what we want to do and how we want to do it, to have the freedom to browse openly the entire wealth of human knowledge. To do all of those things, they are going to censor just what they don't like, to monitor the people that they feel will do things they don't like. Guilty until proven innocent. I'm sorry, that's the wrong way round. We need to be innocent until proven guilty. If we do a thing, if we look at a thing, if there is evidence to us doing something, that is when we are monitored, that is when we are punished. You cannot start infringing on people more than you already fucking have by jumping in and taking a look at all of this stuff and then preventing us from doing things and publishing things. Like I've been critical of the government. I have been critical of various things that they have been doing on this channel. Under this, I would be really worried about just how far they would push it. Maybe not to begin with, but just a little while on, and then just see how many of my videos around those topics, around those things, this one as well, for instance, how many of those would survive? How many of those would be allowed to be shown within the UK? How many of those would be forced to be removed from YouTube? Like, this is just a horrific thing that they're doing, and they are taking steps based out of fear, based out of authoritarian and puritanical beliefs towards things that make no sense, to make us less safe, to make our defences weaker, to make our agency weaker, to control us. They've already been doing this time and time again, playing on fears, playing on people not paying attention. The one thing that I could agree with in the entire manifesto was in regards to controls on gambling, which is something I covered on loot boxes earlier this week. Gambling and things like that. Yeah, sure, re-regulate those. But then again, we've already got a framework for that on the Isle of Man. In which case, guess what? You can already use that. Just transfer it across, make some tweaks here and there. But otherwise, you don't need to take these huge steps. And so, as a result, this all seems to run counter to various things, considering that they're saying that originally that they said that they wanted to be reliable and objective and ensure our democracy when May was elected, and yet now they're cracking down on things like the internet, where news sources are kind of available. So there is fake news. I'm not saying that there isn't, but again, me doing commentary, me putting my take on something, me discussing things that are completely unrelated, coaching focused, but are around things like sex, or around things like relationships, around things like best practice, about political issues that have been raised. You know, if any of that was deemed dislikable by these people, they could get rid of it. In which case you are left with the BBC, which may as well be, in various areas, may as well be the government's voice box, considering that it is a government-funded national TV service. And if they wanted to, then they could quite heavily lean on the BBC to say just whatever they wanted. It's not like they don't already. And so, to one degree or another. And so then, though, looking at this, this isn't objective. This decision to just attack the internet and over-regulate it and poke holes in it so it's easier for people to hide and easier for them to find their way into the average citizen's affairs. Doing all of those things it's not demonstrating reliability, which quite frankly we've not seen from this current government anyway, or the governments preceding it either, really, for the longest time. It's not ensuring information that's necessary for democracy. As said, having the information on people's profiles, having the information on the hate speech, for instance, as said, where you need to observe, see where it's coming from, see where the sources are, work out the ways around it, work out why people are following these ideologies and saying these things, and then seeing how you can educate, how you can rework, how you can reframe so that those people don't have those issues, so that those issues are then not driving them towards hate speech, not driving them towards the various forms of xenophobia and bigotry that are causing the problems. Now, again, would that be a catch-all? No, it would maybe help a very moderate to small amount of people to move away from that. but it's a societal change that needs to take place as a result of steps, not as a result of just mass censorship and control. You know, these people are already lashing out because they feel that the world is against them. Guess what? You're proving them right, and under your authoritarian, strong and stable, not so strong and stable, weak and broken, more accurately, rule, we have seen more attacks on this country than we have in a long time. We have seen more division, more instability, more madness than we have seen in a long time. And this tool, the internet, that allows us to connect to the rest of the world in so many meaningful and useful ways, is now going to be shut down, closed off, locked up, the same way that dictatorships do. Well then, first things first, we need to try and stop this. This makes no sense. It's dangerous. More dangerous than the Snoopers Charter already fucking is. And so as a result, we need to move further towards dealing with this. And so breaches where they're concerned about terrorism, or breaches of UK law, or in more often the case, seemingly, ideologically driven complete madness. In regards to the law, well, yeah, guess what? In which case, improve reporting. That's all you need to do, because the information is already there, the evidence is already there. All it needs is for more access for people to show evidence directly, transfer from one to the other. Yeah, improvement of online systems, improvement of online infrastructure, improvement of online systems that are used specifically by law enforcement. You know, we've got the occasional kind of live chat service for the police and stuff like that, but that doesn't allow the wide range of possibilities for people to report, for people to demonstrate evidence, to report the breaking of laws directly. And yet now we've got this where they're looking to play on the fears of the majority for no reason other than to suppress, control, and isolate. There are a handful of good things in this manifesto for this area of what they're doing, this increased regulation on the internet. And those tend to be in regards to, yes, gambling, fine, that needs to be broadened. Do we need to have better ways of reporting and dealing with people who are throwing hate speech out and so on and so forth? By the way, that seems to include an awful lot of right-wing MPs anyway, to one degree or another. So let's do more of that. Yeah, but that's a very isolated thing. That's not branding things like pornography, which are pretty well regulated industries. They already have their own internal regulation, and then on top of that, they have to kind of work with film standards and film licensing authorities and things like that when they're publishing material. So it's not like they're not controlled products already. But labeling that in with everything else and other harmful things, such a broad statement that could include anyone that you don't like, it's madness. Anyway, guys, I want to know what you guys think, because as I think I made it pretty clear that I think that this is ridiculous. Yeah, the same way that I continue to oppose attacks on net neutrality in various ways. I dislike censorship in a lot of instances, and where there is sometimes a call for it. You know, sometimes, very rarely. For the most part, that seems to fall into a few terrible people have done some terrible things and they need to be squashed. For the most part, though, that's not the case. But anyway, guys, tell me what you guys think. Yeah? Because this is the thing. They want to be a leader in regulations on this by, oh yeah, doing what China and North Korea are doing, and like limiting everything for people to one extent or another, to put structure in place for them to just continue to take more and more and more. But then, you know, the United States have been attacking net neutrality time and time again. Not in terms of censorship necessarily, but then you've got companies over there that have been doing it anyway. You've got people like Trump who seem to be very well in favour of censoring and suppressing people who disagree with him. So allowing this to happen in one place is only going to make it worse in others, because it sets, as I said, it sets an example. There'll be a leader, a really shitty leader, but there'll be a leader. At least within countries that otherwise have been enriched by the internet, enriched by the connectivity, and kind of not driven off by the madness of this kind of stuff so far. But anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think. How do you feel that we could better regulate? And which areas would you say that needs to happen in? But otherwise, you know, this kind of suppression, censorship, control, authoritarianism, government intervention. You know, what are your thoughts on it? Because by what we've talked about, what I'm going to be talking about in a later video this week, as well as what we were talking about in regards to sexual harassment and things in the heart of the video I did on the Harvey Weinstein situation and the kind of fallout of it. The thing that stands out to me is, with situations like that, they're not online, but the fallout from them is people have been jumping on it and drawing all kinds of things under the banner of harassment, under the banner of abuse, under the banner of hate speech, and they've been doing this for ages now. Anything that they don't like is labelled as those things. And so but then those people come and attack. They use those weapons over and over and again, those labels that they've weaponized. And then what happens when you turn it around the other way? You're going to have, it's either going to be completely unequal, or it'll be very equal and everyone will get screwed, apart from the people in control. In which case we get squashed under the heel of another highly authoritarian, disconnected from reality individual who's purely out for themselves rather than actually being a leader and representing the people. Maybe I should do a breakdown of the leadership in the government. Let me know if you'd like to see that. If you wanted me, if you'd like me to break down the way that, at the very least, UK politics, probably US politics as well, tackle leadership and why they're all crap, and why we don't trust politicians, and why we continue to elect morons but then complain about them afterwards. You know, let me know if you'd like to see that as well. But anyway, guys, as said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.